When Jimin defies HYBE to protect Jungkook, a dark conspiracy unravels, risking their careers, friendship, and lives. What Jimin does next shocks everyone. You speak one more word, Park Jimin, and Jungkook disappears permanently. The voice came from the shadows behind the tinted glass wall, sterile and cold like the rest of the HYBE executive boardroom. Jimin's heart slammed against his ribs as he stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides. Across from him sat three men in black suits, their faces unreadable, their threats clear. One of them tapped a silver pin against the table in a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if marking time on a ticking bomb. Jimin's breath caught in his throat, his eyes wide, blazing, and barely holding back a storm, darted toward the closed door. Behind it was silence, yet he knew Jungkook was just beyond reach, kept somewhere in this building, alone, scared, and likely still recovering from the aftermath of that night, the night that changed everything. It started 3 days ago, a live stream gone wrong, a slurred voice, bruises that shouldn't have been there. Jungkook had stumbled out of frame, then vanished for 12 hours. The fans had noticed. The internet was on fire. But inside the walls of HYBE, the air was suffocating with denial and redirection, until Jimin started asking questions. And now here he was. "You think this is loyalty?" The man with the pen leaned forward, voice oiled with condescension. "This is betrayal. You were brought back to keep BTS stable, not to stir up old dust." Jimin's voice came out low, shaking but unrelenting. "This isn't dust, this is Jungkook." His memories flickered like broken film reels back to a hotel hallway in Tokyo. A phone vibrating at 3:12 a.m. Jungkook's voice barely recognizable through sobs. And a phrase that still echoed in Jimin's skull. "They said if I talked, they'd end us all." Now Jimin knew who they were. The room was silent. Not even the hum of the overhead lights dared interrupt the moment. Jimin took one step forward. It was subtle, but enough for the tension to spike like a snapped wire. The man in the center raised his hand. "You're emotional. That's dangerous. Go home. Take a break. Say nothing. Protect your brand." "I'm not a brand," Jimin said, teeth gritted. "I'm his brother." Silence. Then, the faintest smirk from the man across him. "Then pray your brother remembers that." As Jimin walked out, every footstep down the long white hallway felt like walking on glass. He felt the cameras watching. He heard nothing, no whispers, no footsteps, but he felt them. The ghosts in these walls. The secrets they buried. His phone vibrated. Unknown number. One message. "You're being watched. Don't trust anyone, not even them." Jimin stopped in his tracks. The message deleted itself within 2 seconds. The parking lot outside was drenched in the dull orange of early evening. His breath steamed slightly against the humid air, a contradiction he couldn't explain. That's when he saw it. His own car parked exactly where he left it, but with the windows slightly down. A folded piece of black paper on the dashboard. He slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and locked it. Heart pounding, fingers trembling, he unfolded the paper. There were no words, just a photo. Jungkook hooked up to an IV, unconscious, his wrists bruised. The edges of Jimin's control cracked. Suddenly, everything he thought he knew about HYBE, about the company that raised them, that fed them, that protected their legacy, it all collapsed. This wasn't management. This was something else, something darker. As he started the engine, the world outside blurred in the dusk. He didn't know where to go, only that he had to find Jungkook. He didn't know who to trust, only that someone inside wanted them silenced. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew this. He would burn it all down before he let them take Jungkook again. And somewhere in the shadows of Seoul, eyes watched him drive away, unblinking, calculating, waiting. "You're playing with fire, Jimin. Do you even know how deep this goes?" Taehyung's voice cracked as he slammed the glass of soju onto the wooden table, sending a sharp ring through the empty rooftop bar. Rain drizzled faintly across the city, painting Seoul's skyline in smears of silver and gray. The air between them was thick, not just with tension, but something older, something broken. Jimin leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the horizon, jaw locked. He hadn't spoken since he arrived, drenched in quiet, a black hoodie clinging to his frame like second skin. But now, slowly, He turned to face Taehyung. I saw the photo. They're doing something to him. Something illegal. Taehyung ran a hand through his wet hair, groaning, frustrated. Then what? You charge into HYBE like a hero? You'll get yourself killed. Or worse, discredited. You think they haven't planned for this? You're still thinking this is about Jungkook, but this is about control. Jimin's hand curled into a fist. He's our brother, and that's exactly why they're using him. Taehyung shot back, eyes sharp now. Don't you get it? Jungkook is the key. The fans adore him. He's the global face of the new era. They don't care what he wants as long as he performs. Jimin stood, suddenly. The metal chair scraped the concrete with a scream. His breath was ragged now. Nostrils flared, chest heaving. I'm done being silent. We've all been silent for too long. What about HYBE? Why do you think he retired so suddenly? Why do you think Yoongi vanished for months? Taehyung's eyes widened just for a second. A tell. There was more. You know something, Jimin said quietly. You've known. Taehyung looked away. The rain picked up, hitting the metal railing like tiny bullets. For a long moment, the only sound was the heartbeat in Jimin's ears. They made Namjoon choose, Taehyung whispered finally. Either protect the group or protect the truth. Jimin's lips parted. His stomach dropped. And he chose the group. Wouldn't you? Taehyung's voice cracked. If it meant saving millions of people's hope? If it meant preventing HYBE from unleashing everything they have on us? Jimin didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was spiraling memories flashing through like lightning. The sleepless nights, the staged scandals, the sudden injuries and scripted apologies. The contracts they were never allowed to fully read. But most of all, Jungkook's voice on the phone. Scared, begging. They're watching me, Young. If I disappear, don't let them erase me. Jimin couldn't sleep since. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the black card from the dashboard, held it up to Taehyung. Who left this? Taehyung stared at it, then hesitated. There's someone who used to be inside, he murmured. She disappeared years ago. A trainee who leaked something. HYBE wiped her from the records, but some of us knew her. She's off the grid now. They call her Echo. Jimin narrowed his eyes. Where do I find her? You don't. She finds you. Suddenly, Jimin's phone buzzed. Unknown number again. One image. A CCTV freeze frame. Jimin in the HYBE elevator, 2 hours ago. And beside him, circled in red, a man in a janitor's uniform. Jimin's hands turned ice cold. I'm being followed. Taehyung stood now too. His voice dropped into a whisper. You need to disappear, Jimin. If you want to save Jungkook, you have to vanish first. Burn your phone. Don't go home. Don't contact anyone from the label. Jimin looked at him, hurt but trying to mask it. So that's it? We all just run? No, Taehyung said, his voice thick with something old and bruised. We survive. And then we expose them. That night, Jimin disappeared from Seoul. The media would report a short hiatus. HYBE would release a vague statement about mental health and creative rest. But behind the polished press release, inside the top floors of the HYBE Tower, a war room was already convening. Screens glowed with his face. Data analysts tracing every card swipe. Surveillance tracking every movement. The man in the janitor's outfit stood now in a dark room, flanked by 2 suited officials. He pulled out a USB. He met with Kim Taehyung. He knows about Echo. One executive leaned forward, lips curling into a cruel smile. Then it's time we remind them what silence sounds like. Far from the city, in a small apartment by the sea, Jimin stood shirtless in front of a cracked bathroom mirror. His ribs were bruised. Someone had rammed into him on the subway hours ago. Accidentally. He didn't buy it. He washed the blood off his hands. Cold water. Sharp pain. His reflection trembled. A note was taped to the mirror now. He hadn't put it there. No sound. No footsteps. Just the note. You're close, but not close enough. Meet me before they do. Echo. Underneath was a location. Busan, Jimin's hometown. His pulse thudded against his skull. Somewhere, between fear and rage, something in him hardened. This wasn't about music anymore. Not even fame. This was about memory. Power. Survival. He was done being the quiet one. And if HYBE wanted a war, they were about to get it. The train pulled into Busan, under a sky that threatened to collapse. Dark clouds loomed like bruises above the city. and the sea, usually a comfort, felt like a void. Jimin stepped off the last carriage, the hood of his jacket casting a shadow over his eyes. He carried no luggage, no phone, and no plan, just the coordinates Echo had sent, and the growing weight in his chest that this might be the last time he ever walked free. Busan felt colder than he remembered. He moved fast through the crowd, head down, watching every reflection in every window. He saw the same man 3 times. Same umbrella, same pace. Someone was trailing him. In a quiet alley behind Jigalchi Market, Jimin turned sharply into a small noodle shop he hadn't seen in years. A bell chimed overhead. The place was empty. The smell of anchovy broth lingered in the air like a memory. "Table in the back," the ajumma behind the counter said without looking up. Jimin froze. Her voice didn't match her face, too young, too sharp. He moved cautiously to the corner booth. A glass of cold barley tea was already waiting. Then she sat down across from him. Short black hair, dark eyes, no makeup. The type of face you could never quite remember but never fully forget. "I expected you sooner," she said, folding her hands. "You're Echo," Jimin said, not as a question. "You're slower than they said, but bolder. That's dangerous." Jimin didn't blink. "Where's Jungkook?" Echo tilted her head, still asking the wrong questions. His fingers curled around the glass, knuckles white. "You sent the photo," he said. "The USB. You've been watching us." "I was one of you," Echo said, voice low. "But I was smart enough to leave before they locked the doors for good." Jimin leaned forward. "You think I care about your story? I'm not here for exposition. Tell me what HYBE is doing to Jungkook." Echo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Approval, maybe. "You really don't know, do you?" she said quietly. "You think this is about a scandal, an abuse case, a contract dispute. But it's bigger. HYBE doesn't just manage idols anymore. They create them." He frowned. "What are you talking about?" She reached into her coat, pulled out a small drive, placed it on the table. "They've been running a neural behavioral program since 2021. First, through internal therapy sessions, then sleep monitoring, then full-on neural conditioning. They call it Project Siren. Jungkook was their first high-yield subject. They mapped his emotional responses, tested stress levels, modulated his dopamine cycles." Jimin stared at her. "That's not possible. He would have told us." "No," she said. "He wouldn't. That's the point. They rewired him to protect the system." A beat passed. His stomach twisted. "You're saying they brainwashed him?" "I'm saying..." Echo leaned in. "Jungkook doesn't know who he is anymore." Jimin's hand shot out, knocking over the tea. The cup shattered against the floor. The ajumma behind the counter didn't even flinch. "Lies," he whispered. "All of this, it's conspiracy trash. He's been tired, yes, but he's still him. He called me. He begged me for help." Echo didn't look away. "Because some part of him still remembers. That's what they fear most. Reawakening." The bell over the door rang again. 3 men entered. No umbrellas. Dry clothes. Jimin's breath stopped. "Move," Echo said, grabbing his wrist. They ducked through the kitchen, into the back alley. Rain pounded the tin roof above. One of the men was already at the side door. Echo reached into her sleeve and pulled out a flash grenade. "Cover your eyes." The alley lit up like a miniature sun. Screams followed. They ran. Jimin's feet slipped on the wet pavement. He didn't ask where she was leading him, he just trusted her now, more than anyone at HYBE. They reached a parking garage. A motorbike waited in the shadows. Echo handed him a helmet. "You ride?" "Only when I'm not being hunted," she smirked. "You're learning fast." As they sped through the tunnels of Busan, Jimin's mind raced faster than the bike. Jungkook. Neural reprogramming. Siren. Nothing made sense, and yet everything did. The strange mood swings. The way Jungkook sometimes stared off into space mid-interview. The way he would flinch at certain frequencies. The way he once told Jimin, "Sometimes, I feel like I'm dreaming someone else's life." It wasn't a metaphor. It was a warning. They stopped at a rundown shipping yard near the docks. Inside one of the containers, Echo powered on a battered laptop. She plugged in the drive and pulled up encrypted files. Code, brainwave maps, audio transcripts. Jimin leaned in. "What's this?" "Their insurance," she said. Audio logs from inside the neurolab. They wipe their servers every 72 hours. But I have a backdoor. She clicked play. Jungkook's voice. But I don't remember saying that. Another voice. Cold. Clinical. You didn't. We implanted the response last week. You tested well under pressure. No emotional residue. Silence. Then Jungkook again, this time trembling. Please. I just want to go home. Jimin's heart shattered. He staggered back. Hands to his mouth. Eyes wide. Breathing too fast. No, he whispered. No, no, no. Echo turned off the laptop. They're using him, Jimin. And they'll erase him completely if you don't act soon. He slumped against the wall. Tears burning behind his eyes. Rage, guilt, horror. It all mixed into a storm that drowned him. What do I do? He said barely above a whisper. How do I save him? Echo walked up to him, voice colder than the rain outside. You don't. He looked up, stunned. You can't save him. Not yet. First, you have to destroy the thing controlling him. She handed him a photo, a building, a name. The Neuromod Core Facility, just outside Seoul. Inside it, the servers, the backup data, the control switch. He stared at the photo, then back at her. This is war, he said. She nodded. Good, because HYBE declared it the day they made you idols. That night, as Jimin lay in an abandoned hotel room overlooking the sea, sleep refused him. He stared at the ceiling, hands trembling. But in the silence, he whispered to himself, I'm coming for you, Jungkook, no matter what it takes. And miles away, in a cold, sterile room, Jungkook sat in front of a camera, eyes vacant. A voice in his earpiece said, Smile for the fans, Jungkook. Make them believe. He smiled. But deep in his chest, something stirred. A pulse. A memory. A name. Jimin. The night Jimin broke into the Neuromod Core Facility, the skies over Seoul were stained with a sickly shade of red sunset clinging to the city like a warning. The building stood at the edge of the Han River, sleek and windowless, resembling more of a prison than a corporate lab. Officially, it was registered as an AI development center under a shell company called Veritas Labs. Unofficially, it was where HYBE rewired their most valuable assets. Jimin had studied every blueprint Echo gave him. He knew the cameras rotated every 17 seconds, that the security guards at the side gate smoked near the dumpster at exactly 11:42 p.m. He timed his entry to that minute, but nothing could have prepared him for what was inside. After scaling the fence and slipping through the unlocked maintenance hatch, he found himself in a narrow corridor bathed in cold blue light. The walls were steel, humming faintly, like they were alive. Doors lined the hall, each labeled with a number and a barcode. No names, no windows. Echo's voice echoed in his earpiece. Keep going. Third hallway on the right. Room 217. That's where they house the neural interface backups. We delete that. They lose control. Jimin moved with purpose, heart pounding. He wasn't a spy. He wasn't trained for this. But desperation made you fearless. He reached the door. No handle, just a panel. Face recognition, Echo said. Hold up the mask. Jimin took out the synthetic faceplate, crafted from a 3D scan of a former intern who'd gone missing 6 months ago. He held it up. The panel blinked green. The door slid open. And that's when everything went wrong. A siren wailed. Jimin froze. Echo. What the hell? They activated blackout protocol, she said, voice suddenly strained. They knew someone was coming. Get out of there now. But it was too late. From the far end of the corridor, 3 guards stormed forward, tasers drawn. Jimin ducked back into the room, heart racing, breath sharp and shallow. The lab was a maze of glowing servers, blinking lights, cables coiled like serpents. On a central screen, lines of data scrolled in real time. Isolating subject, KJK. Neural loop active. Memory gate stable. Emotional variance, 2.3%. Jungkook's brain. Right there. A live feed. Echo, can I access it? Only if you want to die. That terminal is locked to biometric data. But you can still kill it. Pull the red drives. Jimin dashed to the rack. 5 drives, glowing faintly. Do it now. He yanked the first one. Sparks flew. The door burst open. He didn't look. He pulled the second. A shout behind him. A taser cracked. Pain exploded through his spine. He dropped. The world dimmed, But he didn't black out. 2 guards dragged him up, his vision blurred, ears ringing. He got to the drives, one said. A new voice entered the room. Calm. Cold. Familiar. Park Jimin. He turned his head slowly. It was Bang Si-hyuk. But not the version fans knew. This man looked older, harder. His smile was dead behind the eyes. You always were the emotional one, he said, stepping over the glass. I warned you, didn't I? Loyalty has consequences. Jimin spat blood. You're not loyal to anyone. Bang crouched beside him. You think this is cruelty, but it's evolution. Jungkook volunteered. We offered him clarity, focus, freedom from pain. Do you know what he said? He didn't wait for an answer. He said, if this helps them, I'll do it. Even under sedation, he was still thinking of all of you. That's what makes him the perfect prototype. Jimin tried to lunge, failed. You rewired him, he snarled. You stole him. No, Bang said. We elevated him. You want to help him? You destroy his progress. You bring him pain. But us? We gave him peace. Jimin's fingers twitched. He was inches from the last drive. One chance. I'm going to end you, he whispered. Bang chuckled. Standing, you're going to disappear. Just like the others. The guard raised the taser again. Then a gunshot. Blood sprayed. One guard dropped. Chows erupted. Echo burst in from the shadows. Dual pistols raised. Her face was calm, precise. Jimin, move. He grabbed the final drive and yanked it just as she threw a smoke bomb. The lab went dark. Sirens shrieked. Bullets flew. Jimin stumbled forward. Echo grabbing him under the arm. You're lucky I like you, she growled. They escaped through the same hatch, barely ahead of the lockdown sequence. Alarms blared across the river. Drones swarmed the sky, but they were already on a stolen bike tearing through side roads. Inside the lab, Bang stood. Blood spattered across his collar. He turned to the server. Now dark. No more loops, a tech said. Bang's eyes narrowed. Then wake him up. The tech hesitated. Sir, without the neural stability protocol, we don't know what he'll remember. Bang's voice turned icy. Wake him up. Back in the hideout, Jimin lay on the concrete floor, shivering. They're going to come harder now, Echo said. That facility was critical. You just decapitated their control system. Jimin stared at the ceiling, vision swimming. What if it's too late for him? He said. Echo sat beside him. You asked me how to save him. That was never the question. He turned to her. Broken. Then what is? She looked at him, her face unreadable. How do you bring someone back from a place they don't know they left? At that exact moment, in a room lit only by pale green light, Jungkook gasped, awake. Wires ripped from his head. His breath came in ragged screams, memories, fragments, pain. A voice, Jimin's voice, cutting through the haze. And for the first time in months, he said a word not scripted, not programmed, not approved. Hyung. And then he screamed. The scream echoed through the chamber like a raw wound tearing open. Jungkook writhed on the padded table, the wires hanging from his scalp twitching with the last remnants of electrical discharge. His hands, once obedient instruments of performance and choreography, now clawed at the restraints, blood smearing down his wrist from a snapped IV. Restrain him, a technician shouted, but it was too late. Jungkook's heel connected with the side of a metal cart. It toppled. Glass shattered. Alarms shrieked. A nurse lunged toward him, but he twisted with feral instinct, biting down hard on her arm. She screamed. Blood sprayed the wall. Another technician hit a switch. The room went white. Jungkook collapsed. Still, breathing shallow, eyes wide, and somewhere, deep in the fractured caverns of his mind, a single name pulsed like a lighthouse in a storm. Jimin. Back at the hideout, Jimin paced the floor like a caged animal. Blood still dried on his knuckles. The servers from the lab sat in pieces on the table. Echo worked silently, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Sweat glistened at her temples. He stopped, suddenly, fists clenched. They'll kill him now. No, Echo muttered, not looking up. They need him. Without the neural loop, he's unstable. They'll try to rebuild it, but it's like smashing a mirror and trying to glue it back without seeing your own reflection. Jimin stepped closer. You don't know them like I do. I know them better, she snapped, finally looking at him. They broke me before they broke him. The only difference is, I didn't have a stadium full of lights to hide behind when I screamed. He stared at her, stunned into silence. She exhaled. "Sorry." Jimin turned away. "You think he remembers me?" Echo's voice softened, almost a whisper. "He said your name in the loop files, over and over, sometimes quietly, sometimes like he was begging." Jimin closed his eyes. A wave of shame, grief, and fury hit him like a tide. "I should have seen it sooner. I should have—" "Stop," she cut in. "Guilt is useless now. You want to save him? Then focus, because I just found something." Jimin leaned over the laptop. Echo pulled up a video feed, grainy, time-stamped from 12 hours ago. Jungkook, sitting upright, awake. But what chilled Jimin was the look in his eyes. Empty. Echo slowed the footage. They injected him with an override serum, something experimental, probably meant to wipe his short-term memory and make him docile again. But he resisted. "Look, his hand twitches right here." Then he whispers something. She enhanced the audio. Jimin leaned in, the voice weak, barely audible, murmured, "He came for me." Jimin's throat closed. He backed away from the screen, his face crumbling. His hand slammed against the table. "I'm going to get him out, tonight." Echo raised a brow. "Then you'll die. Alone." Jimin's voice was razor thin. "Then help me." She hesitated, then turned her screen. "I might know someone who can get us inside." "Someone on the inside? Who?" She pulled up a profile. A face Jimin hadn't seen in nearly a year. Namjoon. Jimin's breath hitched. No, he's been silent for months. Publicly, he's composing, studying. Privately, he's been watching, waiting. He knew what HYBE was doing, but didn't know how to fight it. Until now. Jimin's voice dropped. "He betrayed us. He protected us the only way he knew how," Echo said. "But he's ready now, and he's asking for you." That night, Jimin met Namjoon in a forgotten train tunnel beneath Gangnam. The tracks were rusted, the air thick with mold and dust. They faced each other like two ghosts from a lost era. Shadows flickering under a dying bulb. Namjoon looked older, tired. His eyes no longer carried the fierce intellect Jimin remembered, but something else, something hollow. "Hyung," Jimin said. Namjoon stepped forward. "You shouldn't have come alone." "I didn't." Echo appeared from the shadows, pistol in hand. Namjoon raised his hands. "I'm not here to fight." "You already did," she said coldly. "The moment you let them turn Jungkook into a lab rat." "I tried to protect you all," Namjoon snapped, louder than he meant to. "Don't you understand? They showed me what would happen if I resisted. Contracts terminated, assets frozen, media spin, Jungkook institutionalized, you exiled, the rest of us ruined." Jimin's voice cracked. "And that was better than fighting?" Namjoon looked at him, eyes filled with something raw. "I chose survival, so we could live long enough to fight back the right way. And now, I'm here. So tell me what you need." Jimin stepped closer. "I need you to get me inside. I need 5 minutes with him, alone." Namjoon hesitated. "That's all?" "It's everything." They planned in whispers for hours, until the night swallowed them whole. Across the city, Jungkook sat in his recovery chamber, his hand trembling under the white sheet. A nurse hummed in the corner. He stared at the ceiling, unmoving, eyes glassy. Then, his fingers twitched. And again, a rhythm, not random. A beat, 2, 3, 1, 1. The rhythm of Spring Day. He didn't know why it was in his head. He only knew it made his chest ache. In the stillness of that sterile room, tears slipped silently down his temple. Somewhere, someone was coming for him. He could feel it. He just didn't know if he would still be himself when they arrived. The rain returned on the night they planned the infiltration. Not a storm, not the cinematic downpour of dramas, but a steady, relentless drizzle that clung to the skin and soaked through resolve. Seoul's skyline blinked with a sterile glow. Cold neon filtered through water-streaked windows. In the distance, the HYBE complex loomed like a monolith, alive with secrets. Jimin stood inside the back of an unmarked delivery van, dressed in a stolen uniform that still smelled faintly of antiseptic and cigarettes. His heartbeat echoed in his ears louder than the rain. Namjoon stood beside him, adjusting his earpiece. His jaw was tight, his voice lower than usual. "You have 10 minutes. That's all I can give you. At exactly 2:13 a.m., the guards at Jungkook's sector rotate. There's a blind spot in the hallway cameras. After that, you're on your own." Jimin's voice was a whisper. I don't need more than 10 minutes. You might not even get that. I have to. Namjoon looked at him. You're not ready for what you might find in there. I don't care, Jimin replied, stepping down onto the pavement. I'm not here to find him. I'm here to bring him back. Echo's voice crackled in their earpieces. 2 guards just left the south post. You're clear for now. Go. Jimin moved fast, slipping into the side corridor of the facility, badge in hand. The first checkpoint scanned his ID without a problem thanks to Echo's forged credentials, but his hands were still trembling. Every footstep echoed in his head like a countdown to disaster. As he passed through the second hallway, he caught sight of a small black dome in the ceiling camera. He stopped, pretended to tie his shoe, counted the seconds. 17. Just like Echo said, the red dot rotated, turned away. He moved. At exactly 2:13, he reached the restricted door labeled Subject 970,721 Isolation Recovery. The irony of that label, how cold, how clinical burned inside him. The world might know Jungkook by name, by his voice, by his smile, but HYBE had reduced him to a subject, a project, a number. The keypad blinked red. Jimin took a breath. Echo code 19,970,901. His debut date. They're sentimental bastards, even in prison. The door clicked open, and there he was, Jungkook, lying on a thin white bed in the center of a soundproofed room, tubes in his arm, monitors tracking every breath. He looked thinner, paler, his lips cracked. His eyes were half open, vacant but not unconscious. Alive. Jimin stepped in. The door ceiling shut behind him. Jungkook, he whispered. Nothing. He moved closer, kneeling beside the bed, brushing hair from Jungkook's damp forehead. His fingers trembled. It's me. I'm here. I told you I'd come. Still, no response. Only the soft hiss of machines. Jimin leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently against Jungkook's. Do you remember what you told me that night in Tokyo? You said, don't let them erase me. I didn't. I won't. Not ever. Jungkook's eyes flickered. A blink. That's it, Jimin breathed. Come back to me. Please, come back. A sudden tremor ran through Jungkook's body. His hand twitched. He whispered so faintly it was almost imagined. Hyung, Jimin clutched it, tears slipping down his face. I'm here. Right here. Jungkook's eyes opened wider, and this time, they saw. They recognized. And then his body seized. The machine screamed. Alarms blared. Jimin jumped back as red lights flooded the room. He shouted for Echo in his earpiece. They activated the failsafe, she yelled. They're trying to reboot his neural map. If they finish, he's gone. What do I do? You have to interrupt the system. Manual override. Pull the jack from the wall, behind the panel to the left of his bed. Jimin lunged for it. Pulled. Electricity danced through his fingers as the machine snapped off with a violent spark. Jungkook gasped and collapsed. Silence. Then, slowly, he opened his eyes. Real eyes. Not the glazed, synthetic stare he'd worn before. Hyung, he said again. This time, his voice broke. With memory. With pain. With himself. Jimin fell to his knees beside him. I'm sorry, Jungkook whispered, tears running freely. I didn't know where I was. I couldn't find you. You found me, Jimin said, gripping his hand. You came back. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Echo, they're coming. I'm rerouting the elevator to the east exit. You have 1 minute to get out before lockdown. Jimin helped Jungkook sit up. He was weak, shaking, but aware. You good to walk? Jungkook nodded. Barely. Together, they ran. Sirens chased them down, corridors slick with white lights and flashing warnings. Jimin kicked open a security door just as Echo activated the override. They burst into the freight elevator. The doors slammed shut behind them. Down, down. Jungkook leaned into Jimin, gasping. I remember now, he whispered. All of it. The sessions, the simulations. They made me forget you. But you didn't, Jimin said. Not really. When the doors opened, they were met with gunfire. Echo fired first, covering them. Namjoon appeared next, dragging Jungkook into the van. Jimin was the last one in, slamming the doors shut as bullets pierced the steel. Then the van roared into the night. They drove in silence, the tension like a bomb waiting to detonate. Namjoon looked back at Jungkook, who was shaking. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Jungkook stared at him, hollow and wet-eyed. "I trusted you, I know." Then Jimin leaned forward, wrapping both arms around Jungkook's body, holding him tight as he trembled. No more performances. No cameras. No screaming crowds. Just two broken men in the dark, holding onto each other like a lifeline. Echo said nothing. She just drove. And somewhere far behind them, in the remains of the ruined server room, a tech stared at the single line of code that survived the purge. Project Seraph, activation pending. And under it, the air inside the safe house was heavy with ghosts. It wasn't the dust, or the flickering lights, or the cracked walls of the rural estate Echo had brought them to. It was the silence. The kind that doesn't rest, doesn't fade. The kind that lives in the breath between survivors. The kind that follows men who've been remade by trauma. Jimin sat on the edge of the bed, his fingers interlaced and white-knuckled, staring at Jungkook, who hadn't spoken in hours. His younger brother, no, not by blood, but by something stronger, was curled beneath a blanket, eyes fixed on the ceiling like he was watching another world, one no one else could see. Jimin finally broke the silence. "You remember everything now?" Jungkook blinked, slow and mechanical. "Not everything, not clearly. It's like some memories are burned into me, others are just static. But I remember what they did." He turned his head slightly. "I remember the simulations, the questions, the rooms with no windows. They kept showing me fake scenarios, testing how far I'd go for loyalty." Jimin stood up, pacing the floor. "And you never said anything. You just took it. I thought I owed it to them, to everyone, to the fans. If it meant keeping BTS together, if it meant being perfect, I didn't care what happened to me." "You should have cared," Jimin snapped, voice cracking. "You're not a machine." Jungkook's eyes flared with something pain, maybe, or shame. "They made me one." From across the room, Namjoon stirred. He had been quiet since the escape, always in the corner, head bowed, as if praying to a god he no longer believed in. But now, he stood and spoke, his voice low but sharp. "They didn't just do it to him." Jimin turned. "What are you talking about?" Namjoon stepped forward, dragging something from his coat. A small black tablet. He powered it on, the screen revealing encrypted logs. Echo recovered this from the server crash. It's not just Project Siren. That was just the prototype. He tapped the screen. Project Seraph, launched 1 year after Siren. Funded off the books. Target subject, Min Yoongi. Min Yoon-gu. Min Yoon-gu. Min Yoon-gu. Jimin's heart stalled. Jungkook sat upright. "No," Jimin said, shaking his head. Yoongi left. He went silent. He said he needed time. "That's what we all thought," Namjoon said. "But that's not what happened. They took him. He didn't disappear. He was erased." Jungkook's voice trembled. "Why Yoongi?" "Because he was dangerous," Echo said, stepping into the room. "Not physically, ideologically. He was the only one who asked the wrong questions during the loyalty screenings. He was building something, a leak protocol, a way out. And when HYBE found out, he vanished." Jimin stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you weren't ready," Echo said bluntly. "You were too focused on Jungkook. But now you know the truth. Siren was just the start. Seraph is the endgame." Namjoon walked over, handing the tablet to Jimin. "There's a facility, not in Korea, Switzerland, registered as a music therapy retreat. It's where they're keeping Yoongi." Jungkook's eyes widened. "They moved him out of the country?" "They had to," Namjoon replied. "Yoongi was trying to crash their data from the inside. He planted a kill switch in their cloud. If he activated it, it would have exposed every illegal neural mod they ever did." Echo crossed her arms. "But he didn't get the chance. They put him into stasis, a full neuro-freeze. He's been under for months." Jimin sat down again, the weight of it all finally buckling him. "Then we bring him back." Echo sighed. "That won't be easy. That place isn't a lab, it's a fortress. HYBE partnered with a biotech defense firm to build it. You can't just walk in." "Then we don't walk in," Jimin said, fire returning to his eyes. "We run in screaming. Jungkook suddenly stood, fists clenched. "I'm going with you." "No," Jimin said instantly. "You're not ready. You didn't see what they did to him." "I did," Jungkook replied, voice shaking. "In one of the simulations, they made me watch his breakdown. They replayed it until I stopped reacting. They wanted to erase the part of me that loved him." Jimin froze. Jungkook's eyes glistened, but he didn't break. "I let them take him," he whispered. "I won't do it again." Namjoon stepped between them. "If we're going to do this, we need a team. We need resources. I can reach out to Taehyung. He's been in hiding, but he'll come for Yoongi." Jimin nodded. "And Hosik?" Namjoon hesitated. "HYBE's different now. He's not the sunshine guy anymore. After he walked away, they tried to bring him back into the fold. He said no. Then his family was threatened. He changed, got quiet, moved off the grid. We need him," Jimin said. "I know," Namjoon replied. "I'll find him." They spent the next 2 hours laying the groundwork for a plan that barely felt possible. Echo listed black market contacts. Namjoon drew out the architecture of the Swiss compound from memory, and Jungkook stared at the wall, silent. When the meeting adjourned, Jimin found Jungkook outside, standing barefoot in the rain. Just like when they were kids, when things got too heavy for words. "You okay?" Jimin asked softly. "No," Jungkook said. "But I will be. If we get him back." Jimin walked to his side, both of them soaking now. No umbrellas, no cameras, just 2 survivors, side by side. "Hyung? Yeah? Do you think we'll ever be the same?" Jimin took a long breath. "No," he said honestly. "But maybe that's not the point." Jungkook nodded. They stood there for a long time. In the rain, in the silence, while the world spun faster than either of them could follow. Far away, in the snowy silence of a Swiss mountain, a sterile voice echoed through an underground lab. Subject: Min Yoongi. Brain activity spike detected. Inside a chamber of glass and steel, Yoongi stirred. His fingers twitched. His eyes fluttered. A memory flickered like a match in the dark. A song. A name. A promise. "If I disappear, don't let them erase me." And far across the world, they were already on their way. Snow crushed under Taehyung's boots as he stepped off the helicopter. The Swiss air was sharper than he remembered. Clean, freezing, and utterly devoid of mercy. The mountains loomed around the compound like silent judges, cold and ancient. The so-called music therapy retreat was nestled beneath layers of frost and falsehood. From above, it looked like a minimalist luxury resort. Underground, it was a high-tech prison for ghosts the world wasn't meant to remember. He hadn't spoken during the entire flight. Not to Namjoon, not to Jimin, and especially not to Jungkook, who sat beside him the whole way with fists clenched so tight his knuckles had gone bone white. Taehyung's silence wasn't bitterness. It was focus. A soldier returning to the battlefield. Inside the van waiting at the bottom of the hill, Echo watched them from behind tinted windows, her fingers hovering over a detonator-like switch built into the side panel. Not explosives, fail-safes. In this kind of mission, you needed to plan for the moment everything goes to hell, because it always did. Jimin was the first to speak as the van pulled away from the icy cliff road. "This is the last time we do this quietly. After this, the whole world's going to know." Namjoon adjusted the strap on his gear. "That's what HYBE is afraid of." "They should be," Taehyung said flatly. "We're not kids anymore, and we're not scared." Jungkook stared out the window, voice low. "They made me forget Yoongi, made me watch myself forget him. And still, some part of me kept trying to remember. That's how I know he's still in there." Echo turned to them as the van slowed near a service entrance. "Yoongi's being kept 2 levels below the main floor. His neural map has been suspended but not wiped. They failed to break him. He survived in silence." "How do we reach him?" Jimin asked. She handed them a layout. "You'll enter through the eastern wing. There's a secured elevator with biometric locks. Namjoon still has clearance in the system he gets you down. Once you're in, you'll have 5 minutes before they initiate lockdown." "What happens after 5 minutes?" Taehyung asked. Echo didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to Jungkook. "They'll come for you." Jungkook blinked. "What? They still think you're loyal. They don't know the loop broke completely. If they catch you there, they'll plug you back in." "I'm not going back." "Then don't get caught." The compound loomed ahead, sleek, silent, surrounded by guards in thermal suits and white masks. They looked more like private military than hospital staff. Namjoon took a breath. This is it. Jimin squeezed Jungkook's shoulder before slipping his mask on. Let's bring him home. Inside the compound, everything smelled of antiseptic and steel. The lights were soft, designed to soothe. Music drifted faintly through the halls. Yoongi's old track, First Love, re-engineered into a mind-numbing instrumental. It was a twisted irony. They used his own melody to pacify patients. A receptionist barely glanced at them as Namjoon flashed his badge. Dr. Kim, you're late. Your 3 a.m. sync session has been moved to Chamber 12. Namjoon nodded coolly. We had turbulence. The receptionist didn't blink. Still unstable? Namjoon smiled faintly. That's what makes him valuable. The elevator ride was silent. Pour level. Echo's voice crackled softly in their comms. You're almost there. I'm in the system now. I can keep the cameras looped for 4 minutes. That's your window. The doors opened into a dim corridor. Rooms lined the hall, sealed with reinforced glass. Inside, men and women, motionless, heads wired to machines, their eyes fluttering like they were dreaming someone else's life. It was a hospital of lost souls. Room B7. Jimin stopped. There he was. Yoongi, strapped to a reclining chair, electrodes embedded in his temples, chest rising and falling slowly. His hair was longer, streaked with gray, but his face still Yoongi, pale, calm, fiercely still. Jungkook whispered, Yoong. Jimin keyed in the code. The door slid open, and suddenly, Yoongi's eyes snapped open. Not blank, not drogu, burning. He spoke before any of them could. You're late. Jimin choked a laugh. You arrogant bastard. Yoongi tried to smirk, but the pain creased his eyes. Took you long enough. Namjoon moved to disconnect the neural link. He's still running a passive map. We have to be careful, Yoongi grunted. Just pull the plug. I'm not fragile. As the wires came free, he winced, but didn't cry out. Blood trickled from one ear. He sat up slowly, limbs shaking but defiant. Taehyung stepped forward. Yoongi, they said you broke. Yoongi looked at him, voice raw. I did. Then I rebuilt myself in silence. Alarms blared. Echo's voice exploded in their comms. They know. Someone's in the system. Locked down in 20 seconds. Namjoon cursed. We're out of time. Yoongi stood, still unsteady. Then get me the hell out. They ran. Security swarmed the corridor. Echo dropped the lights. Jimin fired the smoke grenade. They moved like shadows, cutting corners, ducking beneath sirens, dragging Yoongi through the maze. Jungkook held his hyung up, tears sliding down his face as Yoongi limped beside him. I'm sorry, Jungkook said, voice breaking. I didn't fight hard enough. Yoongi looked at him, fierce, even in pain. You survived. That was the fight. The elevator sealed behind them just as a bullet hit the frame. Echo's voice came again. I've triggered the fire suppression system. They'll evacuate. You'll have a 30-second window. Outside, the snowstorm had turned violent. The extraction chopper descended low, blades slicing through wind. As they ran toward it, a final warning shot rang out. It missed. They climbed aboard. And for the first time in over a year, all 5 of them were together again. Yoongi collapsed into the seat beside Jimin. I'm not done, he said. Not until the world sees what they've done. Namjoon handed him the tablet. You planted the kill switch, didn't you? Yoongi nodded. All the data, every file, every test, every illegal mod. I buried it deep. They thought they wiped me, but I backed it up. All I need is a key. Where is it? Jimin asked. Yoongi closed his eyes, and then he whispered something that sent a chill down every spine in the chopper. It's inside Seokyeon. Silence fell so heavy inside the chopper it felt like gravity shifted. Yoongi didn't open his eyes again after saying the name. He leaned back, exhausted, the color draining from his face. But the words hung in the air like a curse. None of them wanted to speak aloud. Namjoon was the first to find his voice, barely more than a whisper. Seokjin? Jimin turned sharply, his pulse pounding. What do you mean it's inside Seokjin? He's in military service. He's off the grid. Yoongi exhaled slowly, pain etched in every word. That's what they wanted you to believe. Taehyung stepped forward, eyes wide with disbelief. Wait, no. He's been unreachable, yes, but he sends letters. He sent me one last month. It was his handwriting. It wasn't him, Yoongi said, opening his eyes again. Not really. HYBE took him before he ever set foot on base. The letters, the statements, pre-written, released by their PR team. I knew something was wrong when the ink pattern in his signature was identical in 2 different photos. It was forged. Jungkook's voice broke as he stared at Yoongi. Why him? Why Seokjin? Because he's the safest vault, Yoongi said. Back when the Seraph protocol was in development, I knew I didn't have long. I was being monitored, interrogated in subtle ways. But they trusted Jin. They always did. He was the diplomat, the eldest. So I used him. Jimin's voice was rising now. Used him how? I encoded the kill switch, my full data leak protocol, into a biometric cipher. One that can only be unlocked through Seokjin's neural and retinal patterns. He has no idea. I never told him. It was safer that way. They'd never suspect him. But if we don't find him soon, Young didn't finish. He didn't have to. Namjoon sank into his seat, rubbing his hands over his face. Where is he now? I don't know, Yoongi admitted. Last traceable ping was from a covert research facility in the DMZ. Echo, still piloting the chopper, finally spoke. That place isn't a military base. It's a black site. The kind of place where they bury people they don't want the world to see. Taehyung was shaking now, rage creeping into his voice. He volunteered. He believed in serving. Yoongi turned to him. So did I. So did we all. Nobody said anything for a long while. They landed in northern Gyeonggi province, near an abandoned train station. Echo had converted into a temporary command center. Snow blanketed the tracks, untouched, as if the world had forgotten this place ever mattered. Inside, heaters hummed faintly, casting warmth over cracked wood and maps scattered across a makeshift war table. Jimin stared at a satellite image of the DMZ facility. There were no public records, no name. Just a dense forest surrounding a slab of concrete and radar towers. It looked like nothing, but it wasn't. Let's say we find him, Jimin said quietly. Let's say we get him out. What happens when we activate the data? Yoongi stepped forward, face pale but steady. Everything crumbles. HYBE's reputation, their subsidiaries, their government protection, everything. I've got records of neural experiments, political bribery, media manipulation, enough to sink them 100 times over. Namjoon narrowed his eyes. And us? Yoongi looked at him. Collateral. No, Jimin said sharply. We don't go down with them. They'll make sure we do, Echo said. The moment this becomes public, they'll unleash everything they've buried. Every scandal they've faked. Every whisper they've planted. You think the public knows how much of your lives have been rewritten? Jungkook, arms folded tightly, stared at the floor. Let them see everything. The pain, the lies, all of it. Taehyung turned toward him. And what if they turn on us? Jungkook looked up, and for the first time since his extraction, there was fire in his voice. Then we let them, but at least we'll be real again. That night, as snow fell outside and wind howled through the broken windows of the station, Jimin found himself alone with Yoongi, who sat wrapped in a blanket, sipping weak tea. Did you know it would come to this? Jimin asked. Yoongi didn't look at him. Not like this, but I knew they wouldn't let us walk away. Not after everything we meant. You don't just let gods go. Jimin sat beside him quietly. I think part of me always knew too. There were too many perfect photos, too many scripted smiles. It stopped being about the music a long time ago. Yoongi glanced at him. But not for you. Jimin's lips curled in a faint smile. Not for me. They sat in silence. And then, suddenly, the door burst open. Echo stood in the threshold, her face grim. We found him. Everyone gathered around the monitor. Live drone footage showed a transport convoy moving through the forest, marked with black insignia, nothing public, nothing traceable. Inside one of the vehicles, thermal imaging revealed a figure restrained in a reclined chair. Heart rate elevated. Alive. Jin. Namjoon stepped back. What's the timeline? They'll reach the compound in less than 2 hours, Echo said. Once he's inside, we may not get another shot. That site is buried under layers of armed security and biometric lockdown. We hit now, or not at all. Jimin looked around at each of them. Jungkook, still fighting the remnants of his programming. Taehyung, quiet but burning with loyalty. Namjoon, weighed down by guilt. Yoongi, fragile but unbroken. Then his eyes landed on the monitor again. Jin, the one who held them together, the one who once said, "If I have to fall to protect you, I will. Just make sure you're still standing when I do." "We go tonight," Jimin said. "We bring him home, and then we burn it all down." And somewhere, in the back of a darkened military transport, Seokjin stirred. Eyes still closed, breath shallow, but his lips moved. One word, a name. Jimin. They moved under cover of night. Snow fell heavier now, as if the world itself wanted to bury what was about to happen. The forest swallowed the sound of their boots, each step muffled by layers of cold silence. A private convoy rolled slowly into the hidden facility ahead, its wheels grinding over frozen gravel. The men guarding it wore no insignias, no names, just black armor, faceless visors, and rifles that didn't belong to any official military. Inside the middle truck, Jin remained unconscious, his body restrained, strapped into a hydraulic med chair that hummed with low power. Electrodes were attached to his scalp. His hands twitched. His breath fogged slightly in the dim light. Jimin watched the convoy through binoculars from the tree line, his heart hammering like a war drum. Beside him, Taehyung crouched, silently checking the cartridges of his sidearm. He hadn't spoken much since they'd left the station too focused, too still. The old Taehyung, the one who laughed too loud and teased too easily, had been buried under the weight of this war. Behind them, Jungkook knelt next to Echo, helping her override the drone jammer pulses circling the site. His breath was short, but his fingers were steady. He hadn't flinched since they arrived. Namjoon approached quietly, snow collecting on his shoulders. This is it. Once they're inside, there's no way to extract him without triggering full lockdown. Jimin didn't look away from the glass window on the upper level of the compound. Then we don't let them get him inside. Yoongi spoke through their shared comm channel, voice still hoarse but clear. "There's a blind spot just before the west gate. 5 seconds max. If we hit them there, we have a chance." Jimin responded low and hard. "Then we do it." The explosion came faster than any of the guards could react to. Echo's EMP device blew the truck's proximity sensors into silence, shutting down external comms in a 15-meter radius. Smoke erupted from beneath the lead vehicle, disorienting the escorts. By the time the first shot was fired, Jimin was already sprinting through the haze. Taehyung flanked left, dropping 2 guards with tranquilizer darts to the neck. Namjoon took point, shielding the rear as Jungkook moved like a shadow, leaping onto the transport and tearing the lock from the cargo door with his bare hands. Inside, Jin stirred. The moment Jimin saw him, the world narrowed. His lungs stopped working. His knees almost buckled. There he was, still beautiful, even in sleep. Still untouched, despite everything. He climbed into the transport and cupped Jin's face, whispering as his eyes began to flutter open. "Hyung, it's me. It's Jimin. You're okay now." Jin blinked. For a moment, there was nothing. Then recognition, pain, tears. "Jimin, I'm here." But there was no time. The compound roared to life behind them. Floodlights piercing the trees, alarms splitting through the mountain air. Sirens, gunfire, screaming. Echo shouted through the comms, "You have 60 seconds before the second wave hits. Move!" They dragged Jin from the transport, each of them taking a side. His legs were weak, but his eyes were clear now. I knew you'd come," he whispered. Jimin choked on his own breath. "I promised." Back at the base, Yoongi prepared the server terminal. The kill switch data had already begun decrypting, just waiting for one last trigger. Jin's biometric scan. As they reached the extraction ridge, with drones circling overhead and guards flooding the snow-covered hills, Yoongi's voice cracked over the comms again. "I need him now. Plug him in." Jin was placed inside the portable scanner Echo had set up, beneath a sheet of thermal shields. His pulse was unsteady, his voice slurred. I saw you," he said quietly. "In the dreams. You were all calling to me." Jimin nodded, brushing hair from Jin's face. "That was real. We never stopped." Yoongi's voice again. Ready. Initiating code. A blinding light shot from the scanner. Jin screamed body, sizing for a moment. Then silence. And a soft, electronic chime. Yoongi whispered, "We're in." At that exact moment, across dozens of countries, hundreds of HYBE servers began to melt. Emails, contracts, security footage, clinical reports, everything Yoongi had buried began to upload to secure whistleblower portals across the globe. By the time they made it back to the safe house, it had already begun. The headlines hit first. Leaked documents reveal illegal neural testing at major K-pop label. HYBE under fire for human rights violations, idle neural control exposed. Global media scrambles as evidence emerges of massive psychological manipulation. Jin sat quietly by the window as dawn broke over the mountains. The others surrounded him, wounded, dirty, exhausted but breathing. He spoke first. "What happens now?" Jimin looked at him, then at everyone else. The brothers he'd almost lost. The family that had been torn apart and rebuilt under fire. "We survive," he said. "And we live." Jungkook stood beside Yoongi, who stared blankly at the screen, watching their faces flash across news outlets, some calling them victims, others traitors, some just idols. But none of it mattered anymore, because now, the world finally saw the truth. The cost of silence, the price of perfection. Namjoon sat next to Taehyung, both of them watching quietly as the empire that once owned them crumbled. Echo stepped out of the shadows, finally allowing herself to breathe. "You did it," she said. "You broke them." Jimin looked at her. "No," he said. "We remembered ourselves. That's what broke them." Outside, the snow had stopped. Inside, for the first time in years, no one was playing a role. They were just men, just brothers, just survivors, and they were free. That night, as snow fell outside and wind howled through the broken windows of the station, Jimin found himself alone with Yoongi, who sat wrapped in a blanket, sipping weak tea. "Did you know it would come to this?" Jimin asked. Yoongi didn't look at him. "Not like this. But I knew they wouldn't let us walk away. Not after everything we meant. You don't just let gods go." Jimin sat beside him, quietly. "I think part of me always knew too. There were too many perfect photos, too many scripted smiles. It stopped being about the music a long time ago." Yoongi glanced at him. "But not for you." Jimin's lips curled in a faint smile. "Not for me." They sat in silence. And then, suddenly, the door burst open. Echo stood in the threshold, her face grim. "We found him." Everyone gathered around the monitor. Live drone footage showed a transport convoy moving through the forest, marked with black insignia. Nothing public, nothing traceable. Inside one of the vehicles, thermal imaging revealed a figure restrained in a reclined chair, heart rate elevated. Alive. Jin. Namjoon stepped back. "What's the timeline?" "They'll reach the compound in less than 2 hours," Echo said. "Once he's inside, we may not get another shot. That site is buried under layers of armed security and biometric lockdown. We hit now, or not at all." Jimin looked around at each of them. Jungkook, still fighting the remnants of his programming. Taehyung, quiet but burning with loyalty. Namjoon, weighed down by guilt. Yoongi, fragile but unbroken. Then his eyes landed on the monitor again. Jen, the one who held them together, the one who once said, "If I have to fall to protect you, I will. Just make sure you're still standing when I do." "We go tonight," Jimin said. "We bring him home, and then we burn it all down." And somewhere, in the back of a darkened military transport, Seokjin stirred, eyes still closed, breath shallow, but his lips moved. One word, a name, Jimin. They moved under cover of night. Snow fell heavier now, as if the world itself wanted to bury what was about to happen. The forest swallowed the sound of their boots, each step muffled by layers of cold silence. A private convoy rolled slowly into the hidden facility ahead, its wheels grinding over frozen gravel. The men guarding it wore no insignias, no names, just black armor, faceless visors, and rifles that didn't belong to any official military. Inside the middle truck, Jin remained unconscious, his body restrained, strapped into a hydraulic med chair that hummed with low power. Electrodes were attached to his scalp, His hands twitched. His breath fogged slightly in the dim light. Jimin watched the convoy through binoculars from the tree line, his heart hammering like a war drum. Beside him, Taehyung crouched, silently checking the cartridges of his sidearm. He hadn't spoken much since they'd left the station, too focused, too still. The old Taehyung, the one who laughed too loud and teased too easily, had been buried under the weight of this war. Behind them, Jungkook knelt next to Echo, helping her override the drone jammer pulses circling the site. His breath was short, but his fingers were steady. He hadn't flinched since they arrived. Namjoon approached quietly, snow collecting on his shoulders. This is it. Once they're inside, there's no way to extract him without triggering full lockdown. Jimin didn't look away from the glass window on the upper level of the compound. Then, we don't let them get him inside. Yoongi spoke through their shared comm channel, voice still hoarse but clear. There's a blind spot just before the west gate. 5 seconds max. If we hit them there, we have a chance. Jimin responded low and hard. Then we do it. The explosion came faster than any of the guards could react to. Echo's EMP device blew the truck's proximity sensors into silence, shutting down external comms in a 15-meter radius. Smoke erupted from beneath the lead vehicle, disorienting the escorts. By the time the first shot was fired, Jimin was already sprinting through the haze. Taehyung flanked left, dropping 2 guards with tranquilizer darts to the neck. Namjoon took point, shielding the rear as Jungkook moved like a shadow, leaping onto the transport and tearing the lock from the cargo door with his bare hands. Inside, Jin stirred. The moment Jimin saw him, the world narrowed. His lungs stopped working. His knees almost buckled. There he was, still beautiful, even in sleep. Still untouched, despite everything. He climbed into the transport and cupped Jin's face, whispering as his eyes began to flutter open. "Hyung, it's me, it's Jimin. You're okay now." Jin blinked. For a moment, there was nothing. Then recognition, pain, tears. "Jimin, I'm here." But there was no time. The compound roared to life behind them, floodlights piercing the trees, alarms splitting through the mountain air, sirens, gunfire, screaming. Echo shouted through the comms, "You have 60 seconds before the second wave hits! Move!" They dragged Jin from the transport, each of them taking a side. His legs were weak, but his eyes were clear now. I knew you'd come," he whispered. Jimin choked on his own breath. "I promised." Back at the base, Yoongi prepared the server terminal. The kill switch data had already begun decrypting, just waiting for one last trigger, Jin's biometric scan. As they reached the extraction ridge, with drones circling overhead and guards flooding the snow-covered hills, Yoongi's voice cracked over the comms again. "I need him now. Plug him in." Jin was placed inside the portable scanner Echo had set up beneath a sheet of thermal shields. His pulse was unsteady, his voice slurred. I saw you," he said quietly. "In the dreams. You were all calling to me." Jimin nodded, brushing hair from Jin's face. "That was real. We never stopped." Yoongi's voice again. "Ready. Initiating code." A blinding light shot from the scanner. Jin screamed, body sizing for a moment. Then silence, and a soft electronic chime. Yoongi whispered, "We're in." At that exact moment, across dozens of countries, hundreds of HYBE servers began to melt. Emails, contracts, security footage, clinical reports, everything Yoongi had buried began to upload to secure whistleblower portals across the globe. By the time they made it back to the safe house, it had already begun. The headlines hit first. Leaked documents reveal. Illegal neural testing at major K-pop label. HYBE under fire for human rights violations. Idle neural control exposed. Global media scrambles as evidence emerges of massive psychological manipulation. Jin sat quietly by the window as dawn broke over the mountains. The others surrounded him, wounded, dirty, exhausted but breathing. He spoke first. "What happens now?" Jimin looked at him, then at everyone else. The brothers he'd almost lost. The family that had been torn apart and rebuilt under fire. "We survive," he said. "And we live." Jungkook stood beside Yoongi, who stared blankly at the screen, watching their faces flash across news outlets, some calling them victims, others traitors, some just idols. But none of it mattered anymore, because now, the world finally saw the truth. The cost of silence. The price of perfection. Namjoon sat next to Taehyung, both of them watching quietly as the empire that once owned them crumbled. Echo stepped out of the shadows, finally allowing herself to breathe. "You did it," she said. "You broke them." Jimin looked at her. "No," he said. "We remembered ourselves. That's what broke them." Outside, the snow had stopped. Inside, for the first time in years, no one was playing a role. They were just men, just brothers, just survivors. And they were free.